Big news out of the Supreme Court. The Chief Justice of the United States of America just issued a rare statement on President Trump's call to impeach the judge.
And here the Chief Justice writes, for more than 2 centuries, it has been established that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning a judicial decision. The normal appellate review process exists for that purpose.
This exchange is more serious than it looks. Because when the Chief Justice of the United States publicly steps in like this, it usually means something bigger is happening behind the scenes. And if you listen carefully to what John Roberts actually said, the message was very simple. There is a process for disagreeing with judges. You appeal, you do not try to remove judges because you dislike the ruling. That may sound obvious. But the reason this became such a major story is because Roberts almost never speaks publicly like this outside of official court opinions. Multiple legal analysts and news outlets describe this as highly unusual and a direct rebuke of Trump's rhetoric. And that raises the real question here. Why did the Chief Justice feel the need to say something now? Because this is not just about one deportation case anymore. This is becoming a test of whether courts can still act as a check on presidential power. According to reports, the fight started after Judge James Boasberg temporarily blocked deportations connected to Trump's use of the Alien Enemies Act, a law from the 1700s that was historically used during wartime. But the bigger issue was what happened after the ruling. The administration was accused of not fully complying with the judge's order, while Trump publicly attacked the judge and demanded impeachment. And that is where this stopped looking like a normal political disagreement. Because impeachment is supposed to be used for corruption or serious misconduct, not because a president dislikes a legal decision. Basically, what Roberts was saying is, if you think the judge is wrong, take it to a higher court. That's how the system works. And this connects to something people have been quietly debating for months now. How far can executive power go before courts push back? Because over the last several weeks, courts have repeatedly slowed down parts of Trump's agenda through lawsuits and injunctions. But this case felt different because the administration appeared willing to openly challenge the authority of a federal judge in a politically important issue. That is why so many legal experts immediately started talking about constitutional tension and institutional conflict. Now watch this next part carefully. Pay attention to how the panel starts talking less about immigration and more about power, institutions, and what happens when court authority gets challenged publicly.
It is, obviously, but it's so much bigger than that, too. This is, I just want to step back here because there are so many people, I think, that said in the last couple days of, well, are we in a constitutional crisis or not? And if are they really defying an order? Or let's parse whether it was a written order or a verbal order. It's too early. It's too soon to get worked up about this or concerned about this. And John Roberts, who does not choose to jump into the political fray at all if he doesn't have to, says, no, it's not too soon. I am the guy that sits atop one of the 3 co-equal branches as designed by the Constitution. And it's not too soon for me to say, back off, Mr. President. You should not be talking about impeaching a district judge, a district level judge, because you don't like the ruling. That's not the way the last 2 centuries have worked. And so I think, he doesn't get involved very often. The fact that he's chosen to step in here, you see he's responding to what Trump put in that Truth Social this morning.
Right, which I'll get to in a second.
But also just the aggressiveness to push back on Trump this way, choosing to speak and speaking the way he did in this statement. We should all take note of this moment.
Okay,
This is where the bigger picture starts to show up. Notice how they are no longer arguing about one single deportation order. They are talking about the balance of power itself, the president, the courts, and whether the rules still apply the same way. When power gets tested, one important detail people are missing is this. Trump actually has a Supreme Court that is considered more favorable to conservatives than most presidents have had in decades. So normally, if you disagree with a district judge, you appeal upward and let the process play out. That is exactly what Roberts was reminding the country. The appellate process exists for a reason, which makes this situation more unusual. Because instead of only focusing on appeals, the public pressure campaign against the judge became part of the story itself. And this is where the contradiction starts becoming harder to ignore. When judges rule in Trump's favor, they are praised as smart, fair, and patriotic. But when judges rule against him, suddenly they are called corrupt, radical, or illegitimate. The CNN panel even pointed directly to this contradiction by comparing Trump defending Judge Aileen Cannon earlier while attacking Judge Boasberg now. And for regular people watching this, that raises a basic question. Should judges only be respected when they agree with politicians? Because if that becomes normal, then courts stop functioning independently. And that matters whether you support Trump or not. The courts are supposed to be one of the few places where government power can still be challenged. That is the entire point of checks and balances. Now, here's another detail that makes this even more important. Reports say this administration has already been testing the limits of executive authority across multiple legal battles involving immigration and federal power. And according to commentators inside MAGA world, many openly believe this is the moment to push as far as possible while political conditions are favorable. Basically, the strategy appears to be push hard first, fight the legal battles later. That may be politically effective, but legally it creates a dangerous situation if courts start getting treated like obstacles instead of equal branches of government. And this is exactly why Roberts stepping in matters so much. Because he is not a liberal justice attacking Trump, he is a conservative chief justice who usually avoids public political fights entirely. In fact, Reuters recently reported that Roberts has repeatedly warned about growing hostility toward judges and attacks on judicial legitimacy. So when somebody that cautious suddenly releases a public statement, people pay attention. And honestly, this may end up being remembered as one of those moments where institutions quietly signaled concern before a much larger fight fully arrived. Because the real issue here is not one judge. It is whether presidents can publicly pressure courts every time they lose a ruling. And if that keeps escalating, eventually the entire legal system starts looking political instead of independent. That is when public trust begins collapsing. At the end of the day, this is bigger than Trump, Roberts, or one immigration case. This is about whether court rulings still matter when powerful people dislike the outcome. And once a country starts treating judges like enemies instead of referees, the entire system starts becoming unstable very quickly. So the question now is simple. Was this just political frustration? Or was this an early warning sign about how far this fight between executive power and the courts could go? Let me know what you think in the comments. And subscribe for more investigative breakdowns like this.